Welcome back to another episode of Better Than I Found It, the podcast all things college golf. You're listening to Mike McGraw, the men's golf coach at Baylor. My guest today on Better Than I Found It is Florida Atlantic women's golf coach Heather Bowie Young. I've known Heather for over 30 years, since her sophomore year in high school, and I have known her as a great player, and now I get to know her as a great coach. She was an NCAA Individual Champion. She won on the LPGA Tour in 2005, and she has been coaching college golf for 7 years. She's a great lady. She's an incredibly competitive human, and she's got a lot of wisdom for being what I consider to be fairly young in the game, only 7 or 8 years in. She knows a lot about coaching. I really know you're going to enjoy this interview. All right, everybody, let's welcome Florida Atlantic women's golf coach Heather Bowie Young. Heather, thank you for joining me on Better Than I Found It today.
Thanks for having me, Mike.
Yeah, it's great to have you. You know, we're both at the same juncture of a year, and that is the beginning of a season, a fall season. So I know I've got a great amount of anticipation, kind of enthusiasm. Hope springs eternal for coaches. We always think the next year is going to be great, which I truly believe that. But where are you right now with your team? Tell me about your team. You haven't been at FAU, but just 1 year. So this is your second run through. Talk to me.
Yes, we just started. Actually, we had our first practice this week, first workout, and I am looking forward to the year. We had a great, I got a transfer last year from Wake Forest, Letty Bagnoli, who had a great year. 4 wins, won the conference championship, and it was fun to just watch her have fun again on the golf course, honestly. I did my best to just kind of stay out of the way and create an environment where she could be the best version of herself. And she, I think she showed her teammates just like how great you can play when you're grateful for the opportunity. And it was really neat to watch that. She actually is not going to be with us in the fall. She's at home in Italy for the fall. She's got some health issues she's taking care of, but that gives other people an opportunity. So in the fall, we have 4 tournaments. I have 1 tournament that I co-host, so everybody gets to play. So everybody's going to get to play some this fall and show me what they've got. And then in the spring, she'll be back, and I'm looking forward to that. We just brought in 1 player from France, Clemence Cadec, and she's actually a grad transfer. So she's not a freshman, she's a 21-year-old. So I'm looking forward to her experience coming in with this team.
Well, you mentioned you're a girl who played so well last year. That's not going to happen that many times in your coaching career where you have somebody win 4 times and play that well, and you got it right out of the gates. That's a pretty exciting way to start.
It was fun. But she is a lot of it's luck for what happened with us. The previous coach recruited her, and I didn't know what I was going to get. I had watched her as a junior when I was at Clemson, and I knew how great she was as a junior. But you never know. When transfers happen, I think a lot of times they go one way or the other. The kid really gets re-energized or they don't. And so I really just, having been a transfer, I just tried to be as supportive with her as I could and just create an environment where she could, again, be her best version of herself.
That's great. Well, and that's one thing I'm going to talk to you about in a little while is your experiences as a player in college and as a professional, and your experience as an assistant coach at a Power 5 school. So all of those experiences are leading to what you're doing right now. But it's great you actually had the experience of being a transfer. But before we get to that, your college career, let's talk about how you and I got connected about 30 years ago. When you're a high school coach like I was, and I was helping the women's team too there at Edmond Memorial, you always are looking, is there a move-in? Is there going to be a move-in this year? Where, what families move into town with this great player? And I heard all about you moving in. I thought, this is the greatest thing ever, until you decided to go to a Catholic high school down in Oklahoma City, McGinnis High School. Come on, Heather, you had a chance to be with me.
I did. I did. The way we kind of ended up in Edmond was a player named Chris Edgman, who played in a Cannon Cup. I played against him. And so, actually rewind a little bit on that. When I grew up in Delaware, and when my dad came home and said, we're moving to Oklahoma, I was like, why are we going there? And it was just so far away. And it ended up being the best thing for me personally. I mean, it helped me grow as a person, but for my golf, it was amazing. Like to just play in a state where other girls played, to play in the wind, to be able to handle adversity. But I did go to Edmond North for one day. I had been in Catholic school my whole life. It's a slightly more controlled environment, smaller classes. And I came home and I told my dad, I'm like, I can't do it. Like, it was, I really wanted to try it. And I did. My sister graduated from Edmond North, but my brother and I did go to McGinnis and had a good experience there.
Well, you mentioned your brother Tony. He started in the Edmond Public Schools and he stayed there for a while. He was in my 7th grade social studies class, my first year of teaching, actually. And Tony was a fantastic guy. I've actually reconnected with him when we played at Valspar down at the Floridian. He and I had dinner one night, and I mean that was just 3 or 4 years ago. But wow, what a great kid he is! And he wasn't the golfer you were. He decided not to be a golfer, right?
He didn't play golf at all. Neither did my sister. My brother he played some at Baylor when he was in college with his fraternity brothers. But both my siblings went to Baylor, and just lived the fraternity sorority lifestyle, got their degrees, and were very different, but they're actually pretty athletic. Like when they play golf, they can play pretty well, but they just have other interests. I mean, they're both have families and are very dedicated husbands and wives. So that's where their passion is.
That's great. Well, so you ended up at McGinnis, and I'm a bit of a golf historian, as you may know, and you won every high school tournament you played in for 3 years, except a regional at Lincoln Park, because Kim McFarland, who played at Edmond Memorial, that was her one time in high school to beat you, and she beat you at Lincoln Park. Sorry to bring that up, but I'm also congratulating you on like an amazing high school career. You were the best player in the state of Oklahoma, no doubt.
It was fun. It definitely was, again, like moving there where the other girls played. I think one year in Delaware, there were only 3 girls in the whole state championship. I mean, it was energizing to play there. Obviously, Melissa McNamara, I knew all about her and wanted to, I mean, I tied her record. I didn't play high school golf there for 4 years, but wanted to be like her. I knew about her. I knew about Dale. And so, I mean, even growing up in Delaware, I knew about the history of Tulsa women's golf. So it gave me something to shoot for. And I knew Melissa had gone on to play professional golf. So I just actually, she was like who I was trying to be better than in Oklahoma.
Wow. Yeah. Well, you definitely were. There's been a lot of really good players that have played, Stacy Permonasud and several that have played that were really great players in Oklahoma. I still feel like you were the best that came through there. One thing you did, you were the first player ever to play on 4 Cannon Cup teams and the only player to play on the East and the West in that stretch, which was amazing. And you obviously became one of the best players in the country. And you were recruited by Linda Volstadt at Arizona State, and that's where you ended up. So I want you to talk about both that experience and then transferring to Texas. I think you're going to be the only player in history of college golf to win 2 national titles with one school and then win the individual national championship at another. So talk about your college experience. Really unusual and amazing. Yeah,
it was unusual, and it worked out as well as it could, honestly. So when I was taking my recruiting trips back when official visits mattered, maybe they are starting to matter again, but I mean, it really, like, you were taking these 5 visits in the fall of your senior year of high school. And that's when you decided, like, where am I going to go? And Arizona State was my 3rd trip. It was right in the middle. And I just, I wasn't really sure. I mean, I didn't really have any expectation of it. I didn't know Linda that well. Wendy Ward and I were we were starting to be friends, but she's 2 years older than me. So I didn't know what to expect when I got there. But I remember being on the back of that range at Karsten, and I was just standing there watching them practice. And I was like, if I come here, I got a pretty good chance to win a national championship. And I didn't get that. I mean, the other places I think that we could have won, like I looked at Georgia, I looked at Southern Cal, I looked at Oklahoma State, looked at Wake Forest. Those were my 5 visits. And I think all of those other places we would have had a chance, but I knew going to Arizona State that we would win. I also knew it would be hard to play there, which was actually an uncomfortable feeling. And I'm a little bit proud of myself for going ahead and taking that leap, because I knew it was going to be hard. Like, I'd be there 4th or 5th or maybe 6th man. And I was going to have to play really well to just be in the lineup. But I just had this desire to be in that environment when I was on that range watching them practice. So I did. I went there for 2 years, had an unbelievable experience on the golf course. It couldn't have gone any better. I was doing very well in school, in the classroom, but when it came down to it, I really do. When I think back, I was just homesick. Like, I've lived in Arizona twice. When I first turned pro, I lived there for about 18 months, and I love it there. But people in Texas and Oklahoma are different. It's a different lifestyle. I don't even know how to explain it, but
well, I do. I mean, I've lived in I've lived in both states my entire life, and it is a different lifestyle, but it's definitely this. People still wave when you drive in a downtown road. They still wave at people in a car. I mean, it's a very unusual deal.
So we were in my husband and I were in Texas and Oklahoma the last 2 weeks, and we love it there, and it's just a different feeling. So when I was transferring, you had to have like a face-to-face conversation with your coach and say, I'm leaving. And then they would sign releases and send them out. And I only got released to 2 schools because that's all I asked for. I mean, I was like, I'm going home. I just want to go home. And so I looked at University of Texas, University of Oklahoma. And I chose Texas. I think a lot of it was weather. I mean, it was a little further south, 6 hours south. Susan and I connected well. And then the business school had I was transferred to be a business student, and I thought that business degree would look good. Like on my resume, I wasn't sure, I felt like I could make it as a professional golfer, but you never know. Like, you might get out there and be good enough and just hate the lifestyle. So a lot of it had to do with academics, how I chose Texas. So then I go there, and different environment, very, very different environment. And then we've actually had a pretty good team. My junior year, we missed the playoff by 1 shot when Marissa Baena holed out on 18, and then they go into a playoff with San Jose State. We missed out on that by 1 shot, and we were close. We, as a team, made some numbers coming in that if they had just been 1 or 2 better, we would have had it. But Kelly Keeney was a teammate of mine there, and she pushed me every day. I was fortunate at both places. I had people pushing me every day. You may be one of the most
competitive humans I've ever met. Wow.
Yes, very much so. But I had people at both places to push me, which I needed. I never was comfortable. And so I did win an individual title there my senior year. The team went from missing a playoff by 1 shot to not even qualifying for finals the next year. And it just shows you how 1 or 2 players makes a difference. And then I ended up winning at Ohio State, which was great. And then turned pro.
You turned pro, and first of all, thanks for that kind of, I guess, evolution of what happened in your college career. Very unusual. I still don't think it's going to happen again. So we may be talking to the only person ever that's done that. And then I think that turning pro was probably the thing you'd always wanted to do. I assume it was what you wanted to do. Talk about professional golf, the life, and the success you had, because you won on the LPGA Tour.
Yes. So I always wanted to be. My grandfather played in the NFL for 12 years. And so from a very young age, I just looked up to him. I just wanted to be a professional athlete. Obviously, it wasn't going to be in football. I probably wanted to be a professional basketball player, and I stopped growing in about the 8th grade. So golf, I mean, I did a lot of sports, and obviously I was the best at golf. But when I turned pro, I had a very good college career, and I just kind of thought, well, I'll just go to the next level. And it wasn't that easy. I had to go to Q school 3 times. Played on the Symetra Tour twice. The first year I finished about 35th on the money list, which is not very good. And I think that now when I look back, it's, I just didn't want to be there. And so at the end of that year, it's like, okay, this is where the next year I was like, okay, this is where you are. You need to make the most of it. And so that next year I finished 6th or 7th on the money list, which just got you to the finals at Q school. It didn't get you a card. So, the first time I went to Q school was before I ever played Symetra. I was still in college. I had another semester to graduate. So it was a struggle. And each time you go, you have to do some soul searching. Is this really what I want to do? And I did really want to do it. So I think my struggles at Q school is what helped me keep my card. That's why I kept it for 17 years. I still love to compete. I competed in an event 2 weeks ago, my first senior open in Kansas, because you can play when you're 45. I'm 47. It was a senior LPGA championship. The senior open is this week, which you have to be 50. So I think those struggles early in my professional career of getting my card is what kept me on tour. But deep down, I just have this desire to compete all the time, whether it's on the golf course, whether it's playing Scrabble or Jenga or in the classroom. I think that's really what sustained my career.
Well, speaking of that, so you first of all, I'm going to ask you what gave you the spark after playing professional golf to get into coaching? What was the initial impetus that made you want to get into coaching? And then let's talk about how you've used those experiences you just described to help your players. But go ahead. What was the original spark to get you into coaching?
I got into coaching totally on accident. I never, ever thought I would be a coach because I would tell people in my 30s, I'm like, no, I don't want to coach. I don't want to deal with 10 of me. No, that's nothing. No. But totally on accident. I believe it was in 2015 or 14. I was living next door to the director of development for the First Sea of Fort Worth. And he had been an assistant pro at Colonial, and they were just starting this girls golf initiative. And he's like, I have to have a female instructor. It is 8 weeks. Can you do it? It was January and February. And at that time, the LPGA had no events in January. And in February, there were only two, which were Thailand and Singapore. I was not top 50 on the money list the previous year, so I wasn't in those two. And so I was like, okay, I'll do it. I'll help you out. And I could not believe how that affected me, how that touched me in a way that those kids, like, the only thing I ever tried to do was be consistent, because at the first tee, you get a range of kids. You get some very affluent kids and you get some that are not. And so the way I first went into it was like, I just need to be like the consistent thing for them. I need to be here every day with a certain amount of energy. And it was just 2 days a week. And the kids really affected me. Like I went home thinking about it, like, how could I do the next day better? And the intrinsic value of coaching. So I in every interview I ever did, coaching found me. At no point did I think, oh, I want to be a coach at a Power 5 school and live this, head coach life. It just found me totally on accident based on who I was living next door to that I happened to know from playing professional golf.
So you live all those years, you play all those years of competitive golf, not ever dreaming you would be a coach one day. You stumbled upon it, and what you stumbled upon is the real joy of coaching, and you didn't know it existed. So that's kind of amazing, right?
Yes, correct. And I did. Yes, exactly. I just never, I really didn't think that it would, I didn't think those kids would affect me. I thought, that I'm coming in here and I'm going to affect their lives. And they probably affected my life more than I affected theirs.
Wow, that's powerful. But so there's a transition going from being a professional golfer, and let's face it, as a professional golfer, you have to be selfish. You just have to be, or you can't exist, because you've always got to take care of yourself if you're going to make it through these struggles and the downtimes. So how do you go from being I'll put quotations around it, a selfish professional golfer to now it's all about the players and everything you got to pour into them? How do you make that transition? It's not easy.
Well, I think it came at the right time for me. Like, I had to turn 40. Like, I had to become a more patient person, a more understanding person. I think so. Both of my siblings have kids. I think that being an aunt has helped me. And also coaching helps me be a better aunt. But I think that I had kind of started to transition my mindset a little bit. In my late 30s, like, honestly, when they started having kids, and I got to a point where I was having more fun spending time with them than I was at the golf course. So I think it was just a natural evolution of my life based on age. So I definitely probably could not have made the transition. I definitely could not have made it at 31. At 41, it was a better fit.
Well, that's okay. That's good. I hadn't heard that point of view from a coach yet that I've interviewed. So thank you for that. We mentioned a couple of coaches you had earlier. So Linda Volstad at Arizona State and Susan Watkins, completely different personalities and just different. Everything about that was different. But also Kelly Hester, who you worked for at Clemson. So take the three coaches, all different personalities, all different strengths and weaknesses, and I've known all of them. Tell me about those ladies and how they had an impact on what you do today. Something you gleaned from any one or all three of them.
So definitely, absolutely, Linda Volstedt taught me to control my environment. And the biggest part of controlling your environment is what people you let into your environment. Like, are they helping you grow or are they holding you back? And she was when we traveled, when we were at a hotel, we didn't do a lot of socializing with other teams. Again, it was all part of controlling the environment. And that helped me a ton as a professional golfer. It's sort of like in Harvey Pennick's book where he says, don't have dinner with bad putters. Like, do not sit around and talk about, because she would give an example, like you might have a hole that you made a birdie on and someone tells you how they made a 6 and the next day you find a way to make 6. That actually happened to me at Q school. And I was like, oh my gosh, like here it is. And I still got through, but that literally, it was a par 5 that I had a driver and a 6-iron into. And I made a 6 because anyway, it was just, I was like, there's Linda Volstedt's wisdom. Like, you have to control your environment. You cannot surround yourself with people that aren't making you better. So that was her. Susan, much more of like, I would say like a free spirit, a creative. And she taught me that there's more than one way to do things. Don't get so stuck in one way. And that's probably helped me a lot as a coach, honestly. Both of those have, and they're very different. Like one is a control thing and one is the total opposite. But you do have to be both. Like, there is not one way to do things. So like when I'm coaching now, I used to make drills mandatory. Now I set up different drills. Like, this is going to help with this, this, and this. You take what you need, because everybody needs something a little different. There's different ways to do things. There's different ways to approach golf holes. So and then Kelly, definitely. So Kelly and I have known each other a long time. So I told my first group of players at Clemson, I said, be careful of who you meet at 14, because they might be your first boss in life at 41. and they were like, what? And I'm like, that's how long we've known each other. So we played AJGA together, and she hosted me on my recruiting trip to Georgia. And I had so much fun there. I really, really wanted to go to school there and play with her and Vicky Getz, but I had a feeling Vicky was going to turn pro. And I definitely, if I had gone to Georgia, would have had the most fun. I'm not sure I would have ended up with 3 rings, but I would have had a great experience. But she is the most intrinsic, like, she cares so much about the whole person. And then she believes, we take care of the person and then the golf kind of takes care of itself. And so she values each person so much individually. She reminds me a little bit of what my first tee and coordinator told me in Fort Worth. Again, like, I go in there like, here, I'm the, going to do this great. And he said to me, he goes, Heather, they don't care what you say or how much you know. The only thing, what they're going to remember is how you made them feel. And I think Kelly really exemplifies that. Like, they don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And so she always puts the person ahead of the golfer. And so she really works on, you got to develop the person and then the golf will come out. And I think that's really, really great in women's golf. Larry Penley said a similar thing. We were talking about, the difference in boys and girls. Like, boys have to play well to feel good. Girls have to feel good to play good. And so you really do have to coach, I think, in women's golf, the person first, and then you get to the golf stuff later.
I've walked a lot of fairways, not recruiting the same people, but at the Cannon Cup one year with Kelly, and I watched her from afar. She's an amazing coach, and I got that exactly what you're saying. She cared about the whole person, and honestly, there were probably 3 or 4 women's coaches who sort of connected with me and were kind to me when I was the women's coach at Oklahoma State. She was one of them. Yeah. Really have a lot of respect for her, and it's no surprise that she's done a good job at Clemson. But so you've had 3 different coaching influences. All of them, you've been able to pick some things and glean some things that have made you better.
Yes.
Which I think is amazing. And you talked about Linda, and I wanted to mention that right now. I started years ago when we first got cell phones, the teams at Oklahoma State, and I noticed our team dinners, the guys were either on their cell phone or talking about 3 putts or whatever. And so the day I decided to ban golf talk at the dinner table was when one kid had done exactly what you said. He made an eagle on this par 5. And another kid said, yeah, I was going for that green in 2 as well, and I pushed it right out of bounds. And this kid looks at him and says, there's out of bounds? Exactly. He hit it OB the next day.
Yep.
The same kid who had eagled it. So We do not talk about golf at the table. We talk about life. We talk about girlfriends. We talk about things in their life at the dinner table. Cell phones are not allowed, and it's all about the experience. So thank you for saying that. I've been trying to preach that to young coaches. Don't talk about golf at the dinner table. Definitely not bad golf. So,
yes.
Okay, so you make this transition from being sort of a selfish, well, you're not selfish, but that's what a pro golfer has to be, to now all of a sudden it's about the players. You discovered that at the first tee. Wow, I didn't know that. But what attributes as a player, because you're still a good player, what attributes do you think directly help or benefit your players right now? The attributes you had as a competitive player.
Things I really try to model is, and I try to talk about a lot, is handling adversity. Like, it's not if you're going to have it, it's when. Like, you might have a round where you have none, but it's coming and you just don't know when it's coming. So just always be ready for it and kind of have a predetermined response. Like, when you have adversity, either you are kind of like a duck and it rolls off your back and you just kind of move on, or you get real fired up and like, I'm going to fight back. So I think you need to kind of figure out what kind of person you are. Like, how do you handle adversity the best? Because you do need to know how to handle it. And as a coach, I mean, because this helped me as a player, I am so decisive. Like, if they ask me a question, I answer the question and know that there's going to be an answer coming back, because you have to be. I would tell my caddies when I was playing, I try to talk to my players on the course the way my best caddies talk to me. And I had one, I'm like, I don't need you to be correct. I need you to be confident. Like, I had to have that conversation, because when it comes down to it, there's always two clubs that'll work. Always. Like, so you don't have to get so caught up in the perfect club or the perfect shot, but you do have to be decisive and convicted in what you're doing in order to be successful. So I think those two things, handling adversity and being decisive, are what I try to instill in my players.
I was once told by Dr. David Cook, who wrote 7 Days in Utopia, you need to prepare for disasters. They're coming. Some disasters coming. How do you prepare? It's exactly what you said in different words. Biggest surprise in coaching. So you never were going to be a coach, and then all of a sudden you realized, I can do this. But what's been the biggest surprise? Like, wow, I never expected that.
I don't know. I haven't really had any huge surprises. Because I asked a lot of questions before I got in of coaches that had left professional golf. One of my, and his wife was a professional golfer. Kevin Diaz was a great resource for me. He was an assistant at Wake Forest, and now he works for the PGA Tour. And he kind of gave me the heads up. Like, I mean, I would have been shocked had he and I not had so many conversations about how little is actually coaching. So I would say that 30% of my job is coaching and 70% is not. And he's the one that told me that, and he is spot on. So I always tell people trying to get into coaching, because I have friends that play on the LPGA and they think that they instantly should be head coaches because of their golf experience. And I was like, okay, but it's only 30% golf. It's 70% other stuff, managing people, managing an athletic department, doing a lot of paperwork, managing parents. Like, it is so much. So I took the other approach. I was like, there's so much that I don't know that I need to go learn from somebody. And I'm so grateful that I got to work for Kelly Hester, because I did learn a lot in those 5 years. So, and I'm also grateful that Kevin and I had so many conversations, because I was ready for it. But that's probably, if I hadn't had those conversations, I would have been shocked at the percentage of my job that is actually like truly coaching golf. And I'd say it is about 30%.
Never heard that. I love it. I believe it. I live it. You're exactly right.
Yeah.
So I had a twin sister who won 9 Oklahoma State amateur golf championships. She's definitely a competitive player, still loves to play. But so when she was growing up, definitely there weren't as many opportunities for females. She had to play on the men's golf team at Ponca City High School. I mean, so there weren't a lot of opportunities. She knows there's more now, and you were able to take advantage of those. But you also have been around guys a lot, whether it's, you've been around really good players on the guys. So give me the biggest differences between the females that are really good players and the guys that you've been around that are good players, because there is a difference, and I've coached both. So give me your opinion on that.
So crazy small world story. So when I lived in Delaware, I did play on a boys team. My next door neighbor is named Joey Maxson, who's now the assistant at Clemson. So he and I grew up together, played golf together. And the best thing that happened to me was that I had to play against those boys because it made me tougher. You're always playing against people that are a little bit bigger, stronger, faster. And so it makes you scrappy and you take nothing for granted. I probably wouldn't have. Again, like moving to Oklahoma was a great thing, but also playing against boys like Joey Maxson in Dover, Delaware was a great thing. And I think especially at Clemson, what I encouraged my players to do was go out there and do your short game, like practice your short game with them, not to necessarily beat them, but they are guys. They don't care so much about failure, I think. Whereas girls try to be perfect and they'll pick the shot that tries to be perfect. Whereas the guy's like, well, I'm just going to try this. And they color outside the lines. Like they're more creative and they care less about failure. And I think girls can learn a lot from that. Like you need to take, especially in practice, like go ahead and try to flop shot and go right underneath of it. This is practice. Like this is where we're supposed to mess up. And I think that, especially the female players could learn a lot from practicing with guys because it's okay if you mess up in practice. This is where I want you to mess up. And then when you get on the golf course, maybe the guys could learn a little bit from the girls, like, well, I didn't exactly perfect that in practice, so maybe I shouldn't try it today in the tournament. So I think that the guys definitely could help the girls in practice. And I think there's some traits where the girls are a little more conservative or more calculated that at times that could help a guy on the golf course in a tournament.
Very well said. Could you coach men's college golf?
Yeah, I think so. I would have loved to have had that opportunity. I'm very happy where I am now. But I spent so much time with guys. I played on a boys soccer team in Delaware. So again, there just weren't a lot of girls playing sports, I guess, when would that have been? The 80s, 90s. So I played on a boys soccer team. Was the only girl, was a traveling soccer team. And, I was raised I had 0 aunts. My dad had all brothers. My mom had all brothers. So I felt like I just grew up around guys and relate well to them. I am very happy where I am, and I do think we need, good women mentors for young ladies. So I am very happy where I am. But I heard Mary Lou Mulfer one year say that she'd love to coach a men's team at some point. And I thought, wow, that's why not? Why not? I mean, it's golf, it's math. I mean, it's probably the one sport like football. I have no idea what it feels like to tackle somebody but golf is math and it's geometry and it's strategy. And I don't think that knows a gender.
I agree with you there 100%. And golf is just a problem solving discipline, whether it's male or female, long course, short course, US Open, little Podunk Invitational. It's all the same. And you're teaching the same thing. I realized when I was a women's coach, though, I had to get through a few more layers of things that weren't there on the guys' side, but they're more coachable, in my opinion. Females, I mean, they're way more coachable. They want to be coached, and maybe I'm wrong. You tell me that. And guys maybe think they're a little bit more expert than they really actually are. I don't know, but so anyway, I think I could have coached women's golf if I had gone longer, but it was a learning curve. I needed to get better.
Yeah.
Okay.
It is. So there are some layers at times. I would agree with that.
Well, anyway, so I think you could coach men's college golf as well. I'm thrilled that you're coaching. Heck, from this interview, I'd come play for you tomorrow. So, all right. So how have you balanced family with coaching together? Having being a part of a family and coaching. I asked that question to Alan Bratton a few weeks ago, and that's been a big struggle for him. He's always wanted to be an incredible dad or husband, and sometimes coaching gets in the way. How do you balance that?
Well, I think God has put my life a certain way. I always wanted to be a mother, and I'm not. And it just worked out that way. I'm not sure that I could coach in today's environment and have kids. I really respect the mothers and fathers that do it because they both take so much time and energy. And I'm not sure I could do it. I'm not sure. But I'm fortunate that I'm married to someone in golf. My husband caddies on the PGA Tour for Jim Herman. And I feel like now, like I have leaned on him so much the last 6 years because he's caddied for 22, 23 years. And I feel like a lot of the situations I'm in now are the situations he's been in his entire life. So I am very fortunate that I feel like I have someone who understands everything that I do, a lot of times has a better perspective than I do, because there are still times where I will default to this player lens, and I need to not do that in this current role. And a coach lens is more similar to what he's experienced his whole life. So he's helped me a lot, and I think that it's much bigger than me. Like, I was given this path, this life, and people were put in my life that have helped me succeed, and he's certainly one of them. But I'm not sure. I remember I played a lot with Annika, and she wanted to be a golfer, and then she wanted to be the best mom she could. So she literally took 13 years away from the game to raise her kids, and now she's starting to play again, and because she wanted to be the best mom she could, and she realized how much time it takes. And I don't know if I could balance being a mother and coaching, just because of the time and emotional demands of both.
Yeah, I think people underestimate what Annika has done.
Yeah.
I mean, you see on the internet and Twitter and photos of her family, and it's kind of amazing how great a mother she's been. So now she's kind of get back into.
The only reason she's playing now is because her kids want her to. Like, I think she was perfectly fine not playing, but that's another layer of her being a great mom. Like, my kids want to see me play, and I'm going to go prepare and do the best I can.
Yeah, you can tell she's still very well prepared for what she's doing. It's pretty amazing. And she's one of a very small group of people in history who literally were at the peak of their powers, the top of their game, when they decided to step away. It's pretty rare. Bobby Jones did it. Lorena Ochoa did it. And Annika, obviously, but not very many do. It's hard to leave it, but she's done an amazing job. And I hope she plays some great golf again. I'm hoping that. So you said balancing family life would be much more difficult if you had children, but you've now balanced a husband life, that family life, as an assistant coach at a Power 5 school, and now as a head coach at a mid-major. Is there differences there? I mean, is that different for you?
There's a big difference, huge difference. And it's probably, so at a Power 5 and as an assistant, and Kelly actually told me this. She said, the hardest thing about your job, what it's going to be, is your time is not your time. So as an assistant, I spent a lot more time on the road recruiting because I had the budget to do it. And also I felt guilty if I was at home, because Kelly does have a daughter, and it's if my husband's out caddying for 3 weeks, there's no reason that I need to be sitting in Clemson. So I was on the road a lot more there because I had the time and the resources, and my family lifestyle allowed for it. So when Jeremy was gone, I made sure that I was gone recruiting. I am now at a different situation at a mid-major where I have a smaller budget, and I have to be intentional. And I actually think it's making me a better recruiter and a better evaluator, because now I'm going to this tournament to watch this kid. Whereas before, I went to every tournament and I just did too much quantity. I would try to watch too many kids for not enough holes. Whereas now I'm like, okay, I know only these 4 kids in this field would consider my school, so I'm going to watch them each for 9 holes instead of 3, or whatever it might be. So I'm a much more intentional person than I was, because I have to be. But I do think in the long run, it's going to make me a better recruiter and a better evaluator of talent.
Well, the truth is you've got to streamline what you're doing and be more efficient. You don't have the luxury of, and honestly, it's probably should be what all coaches at Power 5 conference schools do as well. Streamline it, be more efficient, get your job done. So thank you for saying that. Biggest challenge facing in FAU, mid-major, female coach, that type of thing. What's the biggest challenge you think? If the number one challenge, what would it be?
Well, I mean, it's definitely always going to be budget compared to the other schools. And it's not so much the number, it's what the number allows you to do. So, for instance, I don't recruit as much, but again, it's maybe more intentional. So it might end up being okay. The one thing I won't compromise on is I try to have the strongest schedule possible. I have really worked hard on building that schedule. And so there are other things that I will have to give up in order to play that schedule. But again, it's made me a more intentional coach. Like, we don't do, I've had recruits ask me, do you do training trips? And well, for one, I'm not going to budget for a training trip, but also I'm as far south as I could get. Like people are coming here for training trips, but like we don't do team retreats because I'd rather be able to spend that money like last year and go to the Clover Cup and play in a really good tournament in Arizona. So it just makes me, I just have to prioritize certain things. And so my number one priority is schedule. I want to play the best schedule I can. So everything, I work back or forward from that. Like what can I do with the money that's left over after I play this schedule that I want to play?
Actually, that's pretty smart that you do that. Again, it's using the resources you have in the best possible way. I mean, you're forced to do it at a
Yeah.
mid-major. You're maybe not forced to do it at a Power Five school, but you probably should be doing it. Waste is never a good thing. So, how's the transfer portal affected you and your team? You told me you've taken advantage of it. Don't you have a transfer?
Pretty good.
Yeah.
Well, pretty good. I mean, but it's been hard too, because there have been other kids in there that I really thought I was going to get and I missed on other and I didn't get them. So I don't look at it every day. I think there are some coaches that look at it like 5 times a day, but I don't look at it every day. But I do recognize that it can help me a lot. So like with I told this story actually to someone in the portal. I was like, Letty was at a place that had the best facilities she could have, had the best competitive environment, and yet she's done better in our environment. So like facilities and schools don't qualify to go to Greyhawk. People do. And like she made the best of her situation. And I do think we get some kids at FAU that have had the big Power 5 experience. And they're like, well, that didn't make me any better. And so we can kind of capitalize on that. But Letty was a good one. I have one that I've signed for next year that I'm not. I mean, she's at her other school and she's going to play another year. But I think when we do say it, it will surprise some people. So we've got a good one coming next year as a 5th-year senior. So because I have 2 freshmen coming next year, so I didn't. I needed some balance because right now my team's pretty old because I have 3 that I kept as 5th years, another 4th-year senior, and so my team is a little. And I had some money for next year, but I needed to balance it out a little bit. So the portal is good and bad. I mean, it's made things real easy for the kids, and I don't necessarily think that's all good. I can speak from my own. I mean, I was a transfer, and I've had kids that have talked about transfer, and I don't ever discourage anyone, but I do give them one bit of advice that Terry McNamara, Annika's caddy, gave me. I was looking for a new caddy. And he said, Heather, the grass is always greener, but you still have to mow it. And so, like you can look other places, but no situation is going to be perfect. When I left, I probably thought, oh, this is going to be perfect. It was. I mean, there's still, I had to work on myself. Like there's things that in my own life that I had to take care of and that I had to do better. So no situation is perfect. And I think kids in the portal think, that where I'm leaving isn't right and where I'm going to go is going to be perfect. And it's not. Like it's every place needs work.
Well, I've been preaching this for a while now since the portal came about. And you mentioned it earlier when you wanted to leave Arizona State because you were homesick, you had a face-to-face conversation with Linda Volstadt.
Yeah.
And nowadays we've bypassed that. All a kid has to do is put his name in the portal. Yeah. And now, I mean, he doesn't really even have to go, he or she go to the coach. And I think that's where we're missing. I mean, give them an opportunity to have a conversation with an adult before they leave. It's fine to leave, but
100%. I mean, it is, they're missing a huge necessity in life because at some point they're going to need to have difficult conversations with their superiors, whether it's at work or not. And so I don't like the current system. How, yes, you can just go into just enter your name into a computer and
you might say, well, I'm going to be a player anyway, but you're going to have to deal with an agent. You're going to have to deal with a manufacturer's rep. You're going to have to deal with a caddy. I mean, you got to have these conversations with people eventually. So
yes, it's real difficult to have hard conversations with your caddy, real difficult. And this would help if they had to do this one time.
Absolutely. Okay. I've got 2 more questions for you before we finish. Will you be coaching at 57? That's 10 years from now.
Yes. Yes.
Atta girl.
Absolutely.
I like that. Yes. Yeah. I mean, I tell people all the time, they say, well, are you continuing to improve? I say, that's the only choice you have, or you're going to get boat raced. But I think, and this is a strange comment to make, but I make it all the time. And that is, I should be the best coach I've ever been the last day I coach. Now I realize my body might be falling apart. whatever, but my skills shouldn't diminish just because I'm older. If you're not better in 10 years when I interview you on this, I mean, you should be a lot better than you are now. And you're really good, Heather.
I do think yes, you should get better every year. I definitely have learned when to say things and when not to. I've certainly learned that in 6 years. So only say it if it will help things.
Very good. Very good. In fact, if what are you supposed to say? If what you say doesn't improve on silence, then don't open your mouth.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. All right. So last question I want to ask you is this, and I ask this of a lot of coaches and players, because you obviously have been a player and still are, but what's the best advice you'd give a 14-year-old male or female who wants to be where you are, meaning played really high-level college golf, played professionally at a high level, and now coaching at a high level? Whatever dream they have, a 14-year-old, how would they get their best piece of advice?
Compete as much as you can. Always find people that are better than you. For golfers specifically, I would say spend more time on the golf course and less time on the range, because you can't play golf swing. You have to play the golf course. And that's my biggest thing now that I see, is that players are playing golf swing, and it's just because of the advances in instruction. We didn't have those when I was fortunate that I just was around probably 10 or 12 guys that went and played D1 golf, and I just competed every day. Like, I went to the golf course, I warmed up, and then I went on the golf course and I competed every day.
Thank you for that advice. My twin sister would give the same advice. Patty didn't practice a lot. That wasn't her thing, but she always played. And one thing she did that I've never heard anybody else say they did was, when she walked onto a golf course, she posted a score on every hole she ever played. She might hit a few extra shots, maybe in there someplace, but she always posted a score. She thought, if you're on a golf course,
right,
there's a score, and I think it helped her overall be really competitive all throughout her life. But she also didn't spend any time on the practice tee that what she felt would be wasted. So great advice, I think. And well, Heather, this has been a real joy for me. For one, I've known you since you were a sophomore in high school. Never expected you to be a coach either. And now I think you're a great coach. And that's why I wanted to have you on this podcast today. So thank you so much.
Thanks for having me, Mike. It was fun, and I appreciate the opportunity.